Charles Pooter sat at his desk, staring at the blank page of his diary, his pen poised, waiting for the words to come. His hand trembled slightly as he gripped the pen, an unusual feeling creeping over him. It wasn't that he had nothing to say. Rather, it was the overwhelming sense of his own mediocrity. What did his life amount to? What was there worth writing down? He had no great accomplishments, no grand adventures to recount, and yet, somehow, he felt compelled to write. He'd been keeping this diary for years, each entry a list of small, inconsequential events that, on the surface, seemed unremarkable. But to Charles, they were everything. His life, after all, was built on these small moments, the everyday details that made up the fabric of his existence. He took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, and then dipped his pen into the ink, finally beginning to write. Monday, 4th of April. A rather unremarkable day as usual. The weather was dull, the sky overcast, and I had the distinct pleasure of hearing Mrs. Pooter complain about the curtains once again. It seems that no matter how many times I try to explain that they are perfectly fine, she remains convinced that they need replacing. He paused, thinking for a moment. Was this worth recording? Did anyone care? But he had always thought of the diary as a place to document his life, even if it was mundane. He continued to write, the words flowing more easily now. Went to the office today. Another tedious day at the bank. Mr. Perkins asked me to look into the quarterly reports, which, of course, I did with my usual attention to detail. I do wish, however, that I could muster more enthusiasm for the work. Still, a man has to make a living. Charles sighed, setting the pen down for a moment. The truth was, he was growing tired of the daily grind. He had been working at the same bank for nearly 15 years, and though he'd been promoted a few times, it was always in the most mundane of ways. Nothing about his job made him feel alive. Nothing about it made him feel important. Yet, he had never taken the risk of leaving, of pursuing something different. The security of a steady income, the comfort of the routine, it was all too easy to stay where he was. Dinner was uneventful, he wrote, picking up the pen again. Mrs. Pooter prepared a rather dry chicken casserole, and young William, as usual, did not contribute to the conversation at all. He sat there with his nose buried in a book, as though the family dinner table was merely a place to eat, rather than to communicate. It's rather frustrating at times. I do wish he would engage with us, if only a little. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. William, his son, had always been an enigma. At 16, the boy seemed to live in his own world, distant and withdrawn, preferring the company of books and imaginary worlds to that of his own family. Charles couldn't help but wonder where he had gone wrong. Was it his fault? Was he too distant, too absorbed in his own mediocrity to notice his son slipping away from him? It bothered him more than he cared to admit. After dinner, I went for a short walk. He continued writing. A brief escape from the house, which feels smaller and smaller with each passing day. I walked to the park, and the evening air, while cool, was refreshing. I must admit, the park at dusk has a certain charm, and for a moment I felt something. A fleeting sense of peace, perhaps, or nostalgia for simpler times. He paused again, feeling the weight of his own words. Was this all he had to show for his life? A string of minor complaints and small observations? There was no adventure, no excitement. There was only the slow, steady march of time. The next day, Charles went to work again. He sat at his desk, as he had done countless times before, staring at the same spreadsheets, answering the same calls. It was as though nothing ever changed. His colleagues came and went, exchanging pleasantries and gossip, but it all felt so empty. He had become invisible in this place, just another cog in the machine. Work today was much like any other day, Charles wrote later that evening, though I did receive an unexpected visit from Mr. Green, who mentioned a new opportunity in the works for the department. It seems there's a chance for a promotion, but I can't shake the feeling that it would only bring more of the same, a bigger office, a better chair, but the same unremarkable work. He couldn't deny that the idea of promotion intrigued him. He had spent so many years in the same position that the thought of moving up was both exhilarating and terrifying. Would it really change anything? Would it give him the sense of fulfillment he so desperately craved? Or would it only serve to trap him in a bigger, more confining cage? Later that week, Charles attended a dinner party hosted by a colleague an event that was typical of the social circles in which he moved. He arrived on time, as always, dressed in his best suit, but he felt strangely out of place. The conversations were shallow, the laughter forced, and Charles found himself retreating into the corner, nursing his glass of wine and observing the others. They were all so much more polished, so much more confident than he could ever hope to be. "Dinner party was dull," he wrote in his diary the next morning. "I found myself lost in the crowd, unable to participate in the conversation. There's a particular couple, Mr. and Mrs. Turner, who always seem to dominate the discussion. Their stories, their adventures, their travels, it all sounds so exciting. I wonder if I could ever live such a life." He set the pen down, his mind drifting back to the evening. Mr. Turner had regaled them with tales of his travels to far-off places, his eyes sparkling with excitement as he spoke of his daring adventures. Charles had listened, envious of the man's confidence and his ability to captivate an audience. He could never do that. He had no stories to tell, no adventures to recount. What was his life, after all, if not a series of monotonous days strung together? As he sat in the quiet of his study, Charles felt a wave of frustration rise within him. Was this all he would ever be? A nobody. A man with no impact, no stories to share, no legacy to leave behind. He longed for something more, but he wasn't sure how to find it. The life he had built was safe, predictable, and comfortable, but it was also suffocating. The world outside seemed full of people living lives of excitement, of purpose, while he drifted through his own, like a leaf in the wind. And then, the realization hit him. He had been waiting for something to change, waiting for life to present him with an opportunity, a sign that he was meant for something greater. But perhaps it wasn't life that needed to change. It was him. He had to make a decision. He had to take a risk. The next morning, as he sat with his cup of coffee, he made up his mind. He wouldn't wait anymore. He wouldn't be a spectator in his own life. Whether it was through writing, traveling, or pursuing a new career, he would take control. He would stop being the nobody he had always been.